obviously you have food, has everything that has to go towards war, and these companies just went from making more things to making peacetime things, so making cars, which obviously went very well for Japan. One quote is, the non-agricultural workforce was not merely larger, but also conspicuously more skilled in 1945 than it had been 15 years earlier. So that's showing that they really did have the workforce, the intelligence, the experience, the human capital to get these things done. He talked briefly about the banking system, how it would hold over. During the war, some banks were given governmental support to loan money to strategic war material producing companies, like those making war vehicles. And they say that after the war, they did the exact same thing just to make the high economic growth, with why they were supporting certain industries over others. Let's see. He talks about the labor force. During the war, there was legislation to discourage laborers from job jumping. So one of the things we always talk about Japan is that people go into a company and they're there for life. And a lot of that came from the war. They were trying to get people to have permanent job positions so that the company could just focus on doing what was needed for the war. And all of that legislation was held over. So now they had more on-job training, significant rewards for being seniors in companies, and it just made more incentives for people to stay, for both the companies to have the employees stay and for the employees to stay with the company over life, which is obviously still in force today. That came from the war. We talked about the sample organizations from the war really made the unionism that happened. So the unions that happened after the labor unions came from the sample organization, according to ours. And they said that land reform was possible because of the devastation, because everything had been taken out. You could then resplit the land so that it wasn't so dependent on these people who owned the land, this landowners from long ago. And he says that there had been a lot of academics and politicians who had wanted this land reform, but it just took the erosion of the landowners during the war and then the devastation just to finally let them make the change that they wanted to. He talks about how the war strengthened the bureaucracy. Even in the war, elites turning the bureaucrats for life, which we saw earlier when we were talking about the bureaucracy. And the same thing with the way that they always resorted to economic things. This is after the Cold War.